Zoom can populate with attendees and participants here at the meeting. So bear with us as we begin the meeting. Okay, I believe we're ready to go here. So let me call the meeting to order. And if I can note for the record that all members are present. And we are scheduled to have a flag salute. So student trustee, wanted to see if you can lead us in this flag salute. And I don't know if we're going to have a graphic up, but if you can lead us in this flag salute, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Veras. And good afternoon, everyone. So if you could place your hands over your chest. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, student trustee. Very much appreciate that. Colleagues and members of the public here and everyone connected to LACCD, thank you very much for joining us today. This is considered a regular business meeting of the Board of Trustees. It does have a very specified agenda, and principally here at this meeting, we'll be taking up items that would have been formally taken up in the facilities and maintenance committee. They will be done as a whole group in a study session in a meeting format for all members of the board to be able to provide comment on. So having stated that, I wanted to move forward and ask if there is any objections to the agenda as presented. If you can please speak now, raise your hand, or unmute and state so. If not, we'll move forward with the agenda, deem it approved by the board. And we'll move towards reports from our employee representatives. At this time, do any members of the resource table wish to make a comment or wish to be recognized to make a comment to the Board of Trustees? And if you can use the hand raising option if you're in the attendee section, and you'll be transferred over to the panelist section. So we'll give it a minute to allow people to do that. And I would remind individuals, we're going to have public comment for regular members of the public. So these are from representatives of employee organizations here at LACCD. Okay, Crystal or Lupe, do we have any listed here?
No, sir, we don't have anybody from the resource table.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll close that and move forward to public comment. Want to let the public know the First Amendment and the Brown Act guarantee a member of the public the right to criticize a public employee in the performance of his or her duties. However, speakers are encouraged to focus their comments on issues relevant to the conduct of the public's business rather than on private or unrelated matters. This public comment section is about regular agenda matters. There will be an opportunity for general comments at the end of the meeting. So with that, I didn't have anybody signed up to me. Lupe, was there anybody that was that requested via you? And if there's not, then I'll take an opportunity for those that are present in the audience. And again, this is for items on this regular agenda.
You're correct, sir. The only item we have is to the end of the meeting and just one speaker for non-agenda items. So right now that we have nobody on for agenda items.
Okay. Okay, so then, and for that individual who wants to address the board, bear with us through the agenda items, and then we'll have an opportunity for general items at the end of the meeting. Okay, so thank you with that. Let's move forward to, yes.
We do have one hand raised. Would you like to ask if the item is on the regular agenda?
Okay.
Hello. Hi, Kurt, is your public comment on a regular agenda item?
It is on agenda item E, recommendations from the chancellor.
Okay, excellent. And let me get your name real quick. Kurt Raisberg, is that your name?
Riesberg, yes.
Riesberg. Sir, you have 2 minutes to address the board. You have the floor.
All right, I am noticing that there is an amendment being proposed, or agreement being proposed to amend the supplementary retirement plan for eligible employees, and I applaud the board for even considering such a amendment. I think it's a very good idea, especially in light of the ongoing, COVID and enrollment I wouldn't say insecurity, but needing more information as we roll forward and as we gather information. And I think that the data will become clearer as we go forward, and that this is a very humane and smart way, flexible way of addressing lowering enrollment and budgetary issues. That's fair to everybody. Now, with that in mind, I just want to propose the possibility of amending the amendment, or considering a June 30th, 2022 option as well as the December 31st, seeing that it falls within still the same fiscal year, and may also assist in, again, further planning as data enrolls out. If you maintain the same deadline of declaration, this way you have a more gradual transition, not only for the employees themselves, but also for the district in terms of planning and data clarification going forward.
Okay, thank you, sir, for those comments. I know we'll get a chance to address some of them and raise them during the item. Thank you. Okay, are there any other speakers requested or requested speakers?
It looks like there's no other hands raised.
Okay, excellent. So we'll close this section of the meeting and move forward with the facilities item. The first on the agenda for us, colleagues, is to approve the addendum to Los Angeles Pierce College 2002 Facilities Master Plan, its environmental impact report, and approve the 2021 Los Angeles Pierce College Facilities Master Plan update. Chancellor, let me move straight into the presentation, and I wanted to turn it over to Ruben Smith, our facilities executive, and there is a panelist. I guess I'll go ahead and introduce the panel real quick so they can get ready. Is Alexis Montevirgin, our college president there, Charbel Safir from our build program, and Andrew Skansky from our build program general counsel. So Ruben, can you kick us off with this conversation, and then bring on the panel to go ahead and conduct it?
Absolutely, Trustee Harris, and good evening. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to share this item. I'm just going to briefly tee this up before I introduce the panel. I just want to let all the trustees know, those who were in the FinPOC committee last year, we had some issues and challenges with the MPAW building at Pierce College. And as a result, we ended up taking one recommendation for a building to be a singular, larger building, and we split it into two, and thus generated the need for us to go to this depth and produce a revision. So with us today to present the item is we have President Montevirgin, we have Sharrell Sphere, who's our regional program director, and we also have Andrew Skansky with Build General Counsel. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to President Montevirgin.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Good afternoon, members of the board, Chancellor Rodriguez. I'm happy to be able to join you today. And I will first want to thank Dr. Smith and the PMO team and the folks that you will be hearing from as part of the panel for working with myself, the senior leadership at Pierce College, and in particular our faculty and the departments, in particular academic departments that are involved in the former MPAW project. And as you'll see now, over these last few months, have really taken to heart and gone back to the campus and really taken a look at what will best meet the needs of our students, our faculty, and our staff in terms of moving forward with such a large building project, which will make significant impact in terms of the services that we provide for our students. So just a brief history of the facility master plan and the proposed changes that we'll be presenting today is that the board first approved a facility master plan for Pierce College and certified an environmental impact report back in 2003. Minor revisions and updates have occurred in 2010, 2014, and 2019. And again, now what we're doing is we're coming to you today with the revision that incorporates the conversations that we have had at the campus level that addresses the concerns that were raised when I first arrived. And so hopefully now we will be able to take this step to be able to fully move forward in terms of this facility, which has been as Academic West and Academic East. With that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Charbel Safir, but thank you.
Thank you, President Montevergen. On the next slide, you can see what the existing master plan had, which is the one building that was called the multi-purpose building, located where the current old library building is, right in the center of the mall. And next to the Great Hall where the board meetings take place at Pierce. The proposed change, the only change that we're proposing as part of the new master plan is going again from this one building to two smaller buildings, one in the same location and one by parking lot 7 that you can see and by the central plant. Nothing else is changing on the master plan. In terms of square footage, the multi-purpose building was a 76,000 square foot building. We're now looking at two buildings, one for about 30 and one 57,000. So we are looking at a net increase of 11,000. However, overall, the trend on the campus is for a decrease, meaning once all the Measure CC buildings are built and the existing buildings are vacated and taken offline, we are going to see a net reduction of 63,000 square feet. Next, I believe Mr. John Holloway will go over some of the CEQA.
Sure. So we believe an addendum is appropriate in this case. Under the CEQA guidelines, there's certain circumstances where an EIR is required, which do not exist here. There's no significant, new significant or substantially increased significant effect, environmental effect. As analyzed in the addendum, the proposed revisions would not result in any substantially increased significant effects. So the addendum is the appropriate document. Next slide. And in terms of procedure, if the Board of Trustees approves the addendum and the master plan update, a notice of determination reflecting the board's approval would be filed by staff with the county clerk. Next slide. And that's all.
Okay. Anything else from Pierce College before I get to questions? Pretty straightforward. So trustees, let me give an opportunity for everybody to comment and ask a question. Again, I think as presented earlier, this was an item that the FEMPOP committee last year worked together with the president and took some feedback from the campus community, and this reflects that change. And when you make a small change, it actually has an impact all the way through the system here at LACCD that includes the facility master plan. So that work is directly connected to this action that's in front of us. So let me start off with Trustee Buona. Any questions or comments?
No, sir, I'm good.
Okay. Trustee Vella?
Not at this time.
Trustee Fong?
Thank you so much, President Vettis. Thank you for the presentation to the Pierce College team. In terms of the buildings, you may have stated it, but what LEED certification are they? And then is it possible that we can move it to the next level? Thank you.
I can answer that. The goal is on all the new buildings is LEED certified. However, we are seeing that most of them are exceeding that easily. While trying to meet the sustainability resolution that this board passed, we're easily achieving either gold or silver. So, but the goal is at a minimum LEED certified.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, President Vettis.
Okay, Trustee Hoffman.
Thank you, President Veras, and thank you for the presentation. So I'm sure we made the decision to go with the two buildings rather than one large building pre-pandemic, but I'm wondering, you know, everything that we're hearing is 6 feet apart, will still need to be physically distanced. Will that be able to be accommodated in the two buildings? And do we have any sort of like buyer's remorse or regret that we didn't keep one larger space? Just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I can quickly answer and then also defer to Charbel. I believe that part of the conversation, at least from the campus level, is even more of, and again, while this decision was made pre-COVID, or this, it's that it actually works in alignment with and sort of not having so many people coming into entering and accessing from one particular building on campus. So, and actually from that sense, the faculty conversations and the campus conversations have actually been that this modification actually will allow us to be a little bit more mindful and be able to embrace some of the new COVID realities that we are now facing.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Trustee Henderson.
No questions. Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Moreno.
Yes, maybe I missed it. I heard the description earlier on comments about the splitting of the larger building. Could somebody reiterate for me why we're making that major change?
I can go ahead and give a brief summary. When I first arrived, Trustee Moreno, there were some concerns that were raised as opposed in terms of the process by which the determination to consolidate multiple areas and multiple departments into one building was made. As a result of such, I allowed and at the direction of FEMPOC and the members of the board that were members of FEMPOC, we went back to the campus and we then had discussions, and it's been approximately a year process at this point to now go ahead, consider the various options. That's why I've been very appreciative of the PMO staff as well for being open to providing us with various options to address the concerns that were raised by the faculty and by some of the staff that were going into the building. And so that's what served as the main impetus and why we are now proceeding and recommending moving forward in this manner.
What are the disciplines that are going to be in these two buildings?
Charbel, would you have that list?
Yes, yeah, I do. So on this slide, building number 2 is what we refer to as the East building. In this building, we're looking at 3 departments going in: math, psychology, and computer science. And then building number 1.
Is that the larger, or which building
yes,
is that?
Yes, sir, it is. It is.
Okay.
And the other building, building number 1, shown here as building number 1, will house architecture and art, media arts, and sociology and philosophy.
Is there, in terms of, I always found it interesting to determine the distance. Sometimes students may have to move from one part of the campus to the other if they're taking a full program. Mm-hmm. Is there a substantial distance to travel between these two buildings, since they're both academic in nature? I noticed on the map, I'm not clear how far they are from one another, but I always had some problems and concerns about disciplines being separated when they're naturally should be together because of the travel time between the two disciplines. So was there some consideration of that?
Yes, Trustee Moreno, and again, Charbel can probably give further detail in his conversations with the architects, but that was one of the things that we were intent with in terms of ensuring that we were preserving the academic core of the campus in that particular quadrant of the college. And it is why it's located, if you will see, what is actually in between those two circles are additional academic buildings that we have offering our classrooms.
Dr. Smith, did you want to say something?
No, President Montevergen covered it well. It's okay. The adjacencies to the other buildings and student support programs that led to the benefit of splitting the two buildings. And so that's what we got. Listening to the building user groups a lot closer, we were able to get to this project that the entire college supports.
Is that a baseball diamond near the near the building and then, yeah, what is that?
It is a softball field and our soccer pit. And that's where they're located currently. So those are also things that we will be looking at in terms of the future, in terms of wanting to make sure that we take a look at all of our fields and facilities and trying to make sure that we maximize and actually utilize the space adequately.
So you may be moving that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Now, is this master plan then, would that have already been considered in this plan? Or is this going to be a change in the plan again?
That will probably be part of the future reiteration of a subsequent conversation with the campus on a subsequent master plan update.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Veras, going
Yes.
back to, if I may, just a quick comment on Mr. Moreno's question. I think poses also the notion, if you know Pierce College, it has some topography issues where there are higher levels of the campus and lower levels. I wanted to point out to Mr. Moreno that the two buildings are essentially at the same level.
Well, thank you. That's also important.
Okay, and let me go to student trustee, and then I know I have a couple of questions that are coming up. So student trustee, any questions or comments?
Oh, no, Trustee Vera, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Trustee
Thank you.
Moreno, could I take up my even though I passed up?
Yes. No. You're I was going to say I was going to come back to additional questions or comments. So Trustee Wellman.
So I was going to say President Hoffman, but Trustee Hoffman knows that I think super highly of her. But I have a question with regard to something that she brought up, because I think it's important because it can have long-term implications, and I just want to know, maybe a little more of what she meant, and also do we agree with it? And this is what I mean, is there a COVID standard with regard to space? Because as the pandemic comes to, and I was one of the proponents of shutting down ASAP because it was coming, right? But as we're preparing for potentially reopening and standards for the future, is our construction program developing or has a COVID, I'm going to say pre-vaccination COVID standard, a pandemic standard? Because I want to make sure that standard, or what it is, and if it's fully discussed, because I'm not sure we can build a building that's going to be around for 50 years, that's going to be around in the year 2017, and they're going to say, what standard was it? It's as though we were building a standard for 50 years ago, which would have been 1970, and something that happened in 1970. And I'm not, and I could be wrong, but I'm not sure that that's the standard that we want, especially since public health is constantly evolving. And if it is, and we should have a discussion about it, but that's the first time that I heard that COVID would get into an actual planning, except for potentially planning for future pandemics, how we deal with it, and the technology of it. So that really brought up my antennas.
So Trustee Wellman, let me ask Dr. Smith to comment on, because even though we're talking about a new facility, that's actually a conversation that's happening for all of our facilities. And that's it's very important. And there's certainly work underway, and when we talk about air circulation and filtration systems and those kinds of things. So I know it's not generally scheduled for all our buildings, but Dr. Smith, if you could touch on what's going to happen here, but also what's going to become essentially the standard across the district.
Absolutely. Yes, it's a great question. I'm glad we're having this discussion. And one thing that Trustee Wallner pointed out is we're looking at 50-year buildings. What's important for us is to be delicate with this approach. And what I mean by that is we have to think holistically. As we're looking at spaces, we are in a pandemic. We're looking at a re-engagement strategy, and what does that mean? At some point, the social distancing may go from 6 feet to 3 feet. We don't know. It may go back to normal at some point. in the next 5 or 10 years. But if we cater all of our designs based on today, it'll be a problem for us because the state apportionment doesn't follow that logic. It's all based on space utilization and efficiency. So if we make a decision to change that efficiency, it could definitely hurt us where we have space we can't maintain. So we are looking at offering more flexible opportunities. I know Vice Chancellor Lids has, and I have talked about hybrid classrooms. Do you have remote environment as well as in person? Can you have an opportunity to have those asynchronous classes with a hybrid class and looking at options to do that? Looking at the flexibility of having rooms that are larger in nature that can actually be collapsed into smaller rooms. Looking at, rooms that are on an exterior wall, having a type of garage door so you can open that up into a quad area. We've built that into some designs. So we're looking at more flexibility and less rigidity, so we can actually ensure that we can have a fully utilized building that fits for wherever we are in the next 10 years. And as we grow and make, and this life cycle of the building will always be beneficial. So that's where we are. I hope I answered your question, but I want to make sure that we don't go too far with spacing and distancing to where it's a compromise on us and how we're able to deliver instruction.
So just to be clear, there is not a standard change because that would change everything. There's a design change to logically incorporate stuff that may come up.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Trustee, does any more other questions? I will say, Trustee Moreno, when we initially saw this, it was interesting because a building that you're pretty familiar with, the Ernest Moreno building of East LA College, was actually a comparable project that initially began here at Pierce. Of course, unlike East LA, where there's a little bit more terrain on that campus, that main campus space here, where it sort of starts climbing up the hill. But there was generally conversation about changing most of the buildings at Pierce College, being its our largest footprint across the district. It really is congregated among in that main mall area, and most of the services are within a relatively short walking distance. So the conversation and the feedback was very interesting from the various departments that were housed there. But I think it does elicit a bigger conversation for us in our approaches to have much larger buildings with multiple departments inside of them, or the kind of flexibility conversation that seems to be our new natural preference here. And sometimes bigger gives you flexible and sometimes it doesn't. But I think there's individual circumstances, and we have a system that's set up right now that takes quite a bit of feedback from the user groups. And as we're trying to create standards across the board, these are also things that are continually impacting. To not to stray too far off the agenda, but Valley College in their next building follows a model of a multi-purpose, multi-department scenario closer to the East LA, and that seems to have gone fairly well for that campus conversation. But it is interesting to note that these things do come up and are still sort of challenges as we design and create the next 50 years of building for LACCD. So thank you.
Could I?
You're welcome.
I just want to offer something. You reminded me of something, and I think the discussion is a very good discussion because this will make a difference for decades to come. One of the biggest errors we've made over the many years of building our campuses, and I've been there since '69, so I know what it looked like at the beginning. But one of the biggest errors was that we, as in Mission College, we didn't make the rooms large enough to accommodate the class averages we sought. So we kind of condemned that school for quite a while to smaller class sizes that essentially played a real problem in their budget. So and I couldn't agree with the gentleman who spoke about flexibility. It's critical that we be flexible, but we also should be cognizant that we have to have size classrooms that reflect our our efficiencies. And I think that's what he talked about. So thank you for that explanation.
Okay, thank you, trustee. At this point, I'll ask for a motion and a second on item D1.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Vella, seconded by trustee Buolna. Did I hear that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Sounds good. So Lupe, if you could do a roll call vote for us.
Sure. Trustee Geronimo?
Yes.
I'm sorry, student trustee Geronimo?
Yes.
Trustee Buolna?
Yes.
Trustee Fong?
Yes.
Trustee Henderson?
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman?
Yes.
Trustee Moreno?
Yes.
Trustee Vella?
Yes.
Trustee Vettis? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The item passes unanimously. Next, we move forward to recommendations from the chancellor. In front of us, we have the request to authorize an agreement with sorry, on the change here, I'm losing my item here. We have a request to authorize an agreement with the Public Agency Retirement Services, PARS, to design and administer supplemental retirement plan for eligible employees. Chancellor, this is your recommendation, so I'm going to pass it on to you to present and discuss the item.
Yes, thank you, Board President Vettis, members of the board. Good afternoon. Good to see you all. Yes, the board will recognize the terms and conditions of this supplemental retirement program. The board back in September of 2020 authorized us to move forward with a very similar program. There are two changes, however, to this particular action item that I'm going to make sure that I underscore. One is that it extends the open window by which eligible employees could participate in the SRP or the SERP. And then secondly, it also offers an additional extended window by which to indeed leave our institution to December 31st, 2021, in addition to the June 30th, 2020 that's already been 2021 that's already been authorized. So it extends the window by which eligible employees could participate and gives an additional departure date to the end of December of this year. All else remains exactly the same, and I would encourage your support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor. Let's take some questions and comments from the board. Let me kick it off with Trustee Vella. Questions or comments?
Not at this time. I think this is a great idea to include alternatives for our employees, as many of them are having different and various situations, quite frankly, in their families and as professionals. So I think this lends itself to an opportunity. So thank you to Dr. Gutierrez and Chancellor Rodriguez for bringing this forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Trustee. Actually, I wanted to cover Student Trustee Geronimo's comments first. So if you're available, Student Trustee.
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to Trustee Hoffman.
Thank you, President Veras, and thank you, Chancellor, for bringing this forward to us. And again, I know you're going to bring us a plan in case we've got key personnel that are retiring from areas such as payroll and other places that we will need to probably replace them right away, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
This is great. Thank you. I'm sure the employees appreciate this as well, the extended time. Thanks.
Okay, Trustee Buolna.
Nothing. It's a good idea. Thank you very much.
Okay, Trustee Henderson.
No questions. Thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez. This was a great opportunity for our employees.
Okay, Trustee Fong.
Thank you so much, President Vettis, and thank you, Mr. Chancellor, for bringing this forward to us. No questions at this time.
Okay, Trustee Moreno.
No questions.
Thank you. Chancellor, there was some public comments related to this. Did you have an opportunity to write those down, and do you have feedback on that public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vettis. I did write it down. At this point, we would ask that you support the matter as it is written. We've not done the analysis for another window, so I would ask that we have the time to do that. Should the analysis prove to be something that we'd like to move forward, we could simply come back and ask the board to extend that. But at this time, I'd ask you to support the current conditions as is written.
Okay, And just for the sake of the public, this is an item that we've received previous presentations on, and so the board has had a chance to discuss and view this this particular approach or the terms of this agreement much more in depth than I think this initial conversation. This is extending a small portion of it, but just for the record's sake, this is something I think we've been dialoguing and discussing quite a bit through the past several months here. So with that, wanted to ask for a motion and a second on item E1.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Welna and seconded by Trustee Fong. Lupe, can you do our roll call vote, please?
Student Trustee Geronimo, advisory vote.
Yes.
Trustee Welna,
Yes.
Trustee Fong,
Yes.
Trustee Henderson,
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
Trustee Moreno,
Yes.
Trustee Vela,
Yes.
Trustee Vettis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item passes unanimously. Next, we'll move on to announcements and indications of future proposed actions by members of the Board of Trustees. Is there any open comments, general comments here? By any members
I
of the board?
do, Chair and President Vettis. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to leave the conversation without saying, Trustee Hoffman and Vice President Buena had extremely good points today about, how we're going to move forward. And, thank you so much with your leadership, President and Chair Vettis, for including us in, facilities and the discussion. But, I agree also with, I was, looking at some of the participant chat between the Chancellor and Trustee Hoffman, and it is, going to be a very, different, opening. And, I know that our staff is preparing at every level and in a holistic way as well. And so I think, from being flexible to incorporating all of the different experiences that our, students will have and probably, for years to come. And so I just want to make sure that whenever we engage in, whether it's matching funds, whether it's new projects, whether it's, drawing down, we really keep that in mind so that, we become that district of the future. If anything, it's a great time to reset on how we rethink space and being able to learn from home, which is, I think for a lot of us, I never thought I'd become, I remember the days when I believe it or not, I told my employer I'd like to work from home. And I remember being looked at like I was crazy. And so, times are changing. And so I think we're going to definitely be able to, with this flexibility, just really at the end of the day, incentivize the way our students will, continue to learn with us. And so I'm actually excited and I'm looking forward to seeing our facilities department and Ruben Smith and yourself, Chancellor, creating that flexibility for our students in our space and to keep them safe as well. So just want to make sure that everybody noticed that we were talking about that. So thank you.
Okay, sounds good. And I know the Chancellor and I discussed his next report focusing quite a bit, his next Chancellor report focusing quite a bit on the in-person, bringing back the in-person experience at LACCD. And so we'll get a chance to update. That includes facilities, conversations, and many of the things that were kicked off from the Pierce project tonight too. So any other comments, colleagues? If not, I can certainly, you're welcome to send the comments by text, phone call, or email through the week as we continue to prepare the agendas for this second group that we're all together. We do have one remaining item in closed session. That's a relatively large item. But if there's no other comments, we'll move to the second.
Excuse me, Mr. Vettis, I think you had a public speaker.
Yes, Chancellor.
You may have had a public speaker on an item not on the agenda.
I do. I am. That's the next part of the agenda. So I'm just going by any of the actions here, and I've seen it. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and open up the public comment again for requests to address the board for matters that are not on the agenda. I will remind everyone that we do have a closed session that we'll recess to right after that, and we'll come back and report out what happens in the closed session. But with that, I believe we had one speaker, and I've done the indication earlier about the Brown Act and First Amendments, but the speaker will have 2 minutes to address the board, and they're able to address it on any items that are here. I believe I see ELAC theater students. Number one, you have 2 minutes, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Professor Rodney Scott has worked tirelessly over the past 15 years and established a reputation based on trust, admiration, and positive growth in the student actor. He is the only option, in my mind at least, as a full-time permanent replacement when Professor Kelly Hogan retires at the end of this semester. You had the chance as a board to promote Professor Rodney Scott to full-time back in 2019, and instead, this great man was passed over. This year, you have another opportunity to promote Professor Rodney Scott to full-time status and prove that Black lives actually matter in this district. And no, this is not solely about race. This is about justice and what the students of this major deserve. I'm not talking about the masses taking Theater 100, which is a general education class. I'm talking about the 50 students that are in this major that have chosen the theater as a way of life. And we believe that Professor Rodney Scott is the best replacement for Professor Kelly Hogan when she retires. If you want this major and similar majors in the visual and performing arts to survive COVID, then this is your moment. And the reason being is that too many students have rejected ELAC and ELAC theater due to the toxic, divisive attitude, blatant favoritism, and unprofessional behavior promoted and propagated in art theater students by Professor Kelly Hogan. Professor Rodney Scott is the only acceptable replacement for Professor Kelly Hogan. And I'll tell you something. If Professor Rodney Scott is not promoted to full-time status this year, I wouldn't come back. And that's all you need to know about how much this means to the students of ELAC theater, combined with the estimated 25% enrollment drop since last year. I believe that this is the best decision for ELAC theater. And this is coming from a student in the major and not just someone taking Theater 100 for fun. Thank you.
Okay, your comments are noted. With that, are there any other comments for items not on the agenda?
There is nobody else signed up and there's no hand raised.
Okay, sounds good. We'll close that item and we'll move to recess to closed session. Colleagues, if there's no objections, we'll take this as a unanimous consent of the board to move into closed session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll be back to report out after the session is over. Thank you all.